Hey David, what have you been doing since this morning? My brother, lounging on the couch, glanced at me over his tablet. On the screen were the same stuff as always, a live streaming app with stagnant follower numbers and a neglected cryptocurrency chart. Research. I've been watching market trends. Gotta get in position early. I had lost count of how many times I'd heard that line. I nodded half-heartedly and walked into the kitchen. When I opened the fridge, I saw leftovers from yesterday, half-eaten and poorly wrapped. I sighed. I paid for everything: food, utilities, rent. But David never seemed to realize that. By research, you mean just watching that streaming app again? As an entrepreneur, it's only natural to know your market. You wouldn't get it, you're a corporate employee, Jessica. Right. We used to actually communicate. We were close as siblings. As a kid, I followed him everywhere, and he always looked out for me. Before my high school exams, he even stayed up all night tutoring me in math. That's why 2 years ago, when he was diagnosed with depression and started withdrawing from society, I didn't hesitate to help. This lease will be up for renewal in 3 months. Do you want to stay here next year too? Huh? Oh yeah, I guess that's fine. How much is the renewal fee? $1,600. Might be a little more with the upfront costs. I see. If you're good with it, I'm fine staying. He said that and turned his eyes back to the tablet. It had been about 6 months since we started living together when my mom called. Jessica, you're such a responsible girl. Thank you for looking after David. We really appreciate it. Her voice was calm, like it was the most natural thing in the world. A few days later, a message came from my dad. We're really lucky to have you. Mom's relieved too. You're so dependable, Jessica. At first glance, it sounded like praise. But beneath it, there was a sense of expectation, as if it were only natural for me to take on this burden. I stared at my phone, flooded with emotions I couldn't quite name. The unease had been building slowly. At first, I truly believed David's recovery should come first. But a whole year passed. He still hadn't changed. No hospital visits, no counseling, just internet, games, and endless talk about dreams. And still, a part of me kept believing that one day he would change. I just wanted to believe. And then came Christmas. I invited my parents and relatives over for a party at our place. Simple food, a cake, and a rare moment of family time. My parents were cheerful all evening. Jessica, your cooking is always so good, Mom said over and over. As the night wore on, Dad said, we should get going, and left in a taxi with Mom. After hearing the door close, I slowly returned to the living room and began cleaning up the dishes and empty bottles. David was passed out drunk on the couch. An empty wine bottle sat on the table. He'd been saying he couldn't sleep lately, but it had been a while since he turned to alcohol. Then I noticed his phone buzzing. Oh, a notification. Glancing at the screen, I saw a message from a chat titled Family Chat. Wait, family group chat? Curious, I kept watching. Then I saw a message from Mom. She probably thinks paying rent makes her part of the family now. Immediately after, Dad replied. Good. Let's keep this up and get her to cover the house mortgage too. My mind froze. What is this? It took a few seconds to process what I was reading. But once I did, it hit me like a fist to the chest. This wasn't a joke. Not a misunderstanding. And definitely not some light-hearted teasing. Everything I had done covering all living expenses for a year, supporting David in the name of family, meant nothing more to them than a resource to exploit. Just a moment ago, we had all been laughing around the dinner table. But now, it felt like that had taken place in a completely different world. I was nothing more than a financial contributor at that table. I thought I was helping my brother. I thought I was making my parents proud. But behind everything I gave, there was only cold, calculated convenience. To them, I was just a walking wallet. A whole year of sleepless nights and relentless work, everything I gave for my brother, it felt like all of it had been trampled on. I looked at my brother, still asleep on the sofa. I didn't feel hatred. Just a quiet, heavy sense that everything was over. I locked his phone screen and let out a slow breath. And I made up my mind. This living arrangement is coming to an end. Soon. I'm getting out of this house and out of this relationship. That was the decision I made. Pretending I hadn't seen anything, I quietly draped a blanket over my sleeping brother. Inside, I was a storm of emotions, but on the outside, I kept my expression calm. Rather than reacting emotionally, I needed to stay composed and observe. The next morning, I began to act. I wanted to find out what my family really thought. I got up early and headed to the office. As snow flurried around me on the train platform, I took out my phone. The first message I sent was, "Sarah, are you free tonight? I really need to talk." Sarah and I had been close since college. Now she was a practicing attorney specializing in family law. If anyone could help me find a path through this chaos, it was her. During lunch, I checked my phone. She had replied, "Yes, I'm free tonight." I left work early and headed to the cafe we agreed on. Sitting at a quiet table in the back, I told her everything. Living with David, the amount I'd been supporting him, my family's attitude, and the messages from that group chat. "Jessica, this is absolutely financial exploitation," Sarah said calmly but firmly. "This goes way beyond just taking advantage of your kindness. They've set up a system where you're being sacrificed." But David's sick. He was diagnosed with depression 2 years ago and hasn't been able to work since. I just wanted to help him get better. Being sick and being dependent are two different things. Supporting someone means creating an environment that helps them recover. But David's just assuming you'll keep supporting him indefinitely and your family is enabling it. That's not love. I said nothing. Because deep down, I already knew. David didn't see me as his sister anymore. He saw me as a sponsor. Sarah pulled a notepad from her bag and laid it on the table. "Jessica, there are 3 things you need to do. First, organize all your payments, everything you've covered for household expenses. Second, gather proof those chat messages and anything that shows you were used. Third, start preparing to withdraw support gradually." Gradually? If you stop suddenly, they'll panic. The confusion should be theirs, not yours. So do it quietly and methodically. Separate your bank account, change the names on the utility bills, cancel your cards, and reconsider the lease. Each word hit me hard. But strangely, I wasn't afraid. If anything, it felt like I had finally been handed a map to take my life back. "Please, Sarah, help me. I can't do this alone anymore." "Of course I will. We're friends, remember?" Her warm smile allowed me, for the first time in a long while, to exhale. When I got home, I switched on the lights and headed straight to my room. David was in the living room playing video games. He didn't say a word, maybe sensing something in my face. I quietly opened my laptop and began reviewing the last 12 months of transactions from the joint household account. Water, electricity, gas, mobile bills, groceries, rent, all of it had been paid by me. Even just skimming through, the total was close to $20,000. I hadn't been helping him recover. I had been supporting him financially like a dependent. And there were records of online shopping, food delivery, in-app game purchases, and subscriptions to bizarre e-books and streaming services. Almost all of it clearly for him. He had never once discussed any of it with me. I realized I'd been losing nearly $2,000 a month without noticing. Then I pulled out a stack of past bills reminders in David's name, including some from consumer loan companies. Unpaid phone bills I had covered, revolving credit card debt. I organized all of it into a spreadsheet with dates and amounts. It didn't take long to understand exactly how much he owed and what for. That night, while David was in the shower, I quietly picked up his phone from the living room. It wasn't locked. The family group chat was still open. With shaking fingers, I took screenshots of each message and sent them to my phone. I tried to stay calm, but my heart was pounding. Let's keep this up and get her to cover the house mortgage too. She probably thinks paying rent makes her part of the family now. Family? That word shattered inside me. I will not be the one who sacrifices everything. I'm leaving this house. And to do that, I'll prepare everything I need. And when the time comes, I'll be the one to put an end to the illusion we call family. I will be the main character in my own life. A few days later, I met with Sarah again. Let's start by listing everything you've paid over the past year. Putting numbers to it helps you see things objectively, she said as she opened an Excel spreadsheet. I handed her the USB stick with all the organized data. She scanned the files in silence, then let out a deep breath. This is clear exploitation. And not just financially, it's psychological dependence too. Legally, you're not obligated to support him. In fact, he's infringing on your right to live freely. But he has depression. Blaming him for being sick just feels. Jessica, I'm not blaming you. I'm pointing out that he's avoiding responsibility, and you're enabling that avoidance. He's hiding behind his illness to escape, and you've become the foundation that makes that escape possible. I had no words. I had wanted to save my brother. But maybe, in reality, I was trying to be the good daughter in the family by appearing to be the one helping. Being thanked by my parents made me feel like I mattered. But in exchange, I had given up an entire year of my life. Next, I started going through all past messages from my family emails, call logs, and texts to trace what they had asked of me and what they had taken for granted. Could you cover David's clinic fees this time? Mom is too busy to go shopping, can you do it for me? We're a bit short this month. Could you send another $200? Each one sounded gentle on the surface. But over months and dozens of similar messages, they stopped being requests. They became expectations, demands. Not once did anyone say, only if you can manage. I had become the family's convenient wallet. Under Sarah's guidance, I also began preparing for legal steps. First, I separated our bank accounts. I canceled all automatic charges and utility payments from the shared account David had been using. Then I opened a personal account in my name only and redirected my salary there. Next, I reviewed the rental contract and began preparing for a possible name adjustment. While the lease was under my name alone, I wanted to document David's actual residency, in case it came up in future negotiations. You're already halfway done. All that's left is to cut off the support at the right moment. Sarah told me, but to me, that felt like the hardest part. David depended on me. But it wasn't trust, it was dependence. Ending that meant letting go of the role I had played, the good little sister. But there was no going back. That night's group chat, my parents' cold exchanges, and my brother's entitled silence. Those moments made it clear. I no longer had to believe in bonds that only existed at my expense. I had never felt so quietly angry in my life. What I needed to do next wasn't just to stop supporting him. It was to take my life back. After our strategy meeting, I rode the train home and made a silent vow. Once I finished preparing, I'm leaving this house. And I will never return to being the family's convenient solution. I began taking action quietly. The first thing I tackled was separating our bank accounts. I stopped the auto payments and deactivated the debit card David had been using for household expenses. I redirected my salary to a new personal account where I could begin saving for my own future. Then I removed David from the shared credit card. He'd been using it for Amazon purchases, gaming microtransactions, and more, but that ended that day. I didn't say a word. He'd simply start seeing failed transactions. It was a quiet decision, like cutting away a version of myself from the past. I also updated the names on all utility accounts: water, electricity, gas. Previously, they were paid under my card. Now they were split into separate accounts and assigned to David. And finally, the last step started. I started preparing to move out. I packed up a few of my things and some furniture into boxes and secretly stored them at a rental storage nearby. A few items at a time, every weekend, so David wouldn't notice. I found a new place, too. A peaceful apartment closer to my workplace. When I signed the lease, I felt a weight lift off my chest for the first time. I told David only that I'd be on a business trip for about a week. I rolled a single suitcase out the door, acting like it was nothing unusual. I had already moved the essentials into my new place. But I left the furniture behind. If I took the bed or the couch, he'd realize something was off. So I intentionally left traces of myself in that house. I wanted him to know I had once lived there. On the morning I left, David was holding his game controller. "Where's this trip taking you?" "San Jose. I've got an on-site client meeting. I should be back in about a week." "Oh, sounds busy. Well, you're doing well for yourself. I've been thinking I should start getting serious too." "Yeah, good luck." My voice was quiet. He didn't know it would be our last conversation as housemates. I opened the door, took a deep breath, and with firm resolve never to return, I quietly shut it behind me. A week had passed since I moved into my new apartment. It's been peaceful. So peaceful, it feels almost unreal. I wake up, brew my coffee, get ready while listening to music I love. Everything in the fridge, every document on the table, it's all under my control now. And my body is finally starting to feel what that freedom means. Then, one morning, a notification arrived on my phone. The sender was my brother. "You should be back from your business trip soon, right? Do you know what day you're coming home? The fridge is almost empty, and utility bills are piling up." I stared at the screen for a while, then slowly placed my phone face down. I didn't reply. It felt like if I responded, I'd be pulled right back into that atmosphere. I didn't want to ruin the peace I had finally reclaimed, not over a single reply. So I said nothing, and I sent nothing. A few days later, the messages from David started pouring in. At first, they were casual check-ins. Then his tone shifted first to worry, then to desperation. "Hey, is something wrong? Just let me know you're okay. The rent hasn't been withdrawn yet. The internet got cut off. Did you do this on purpose? Please just talk to me. I really don't know what to do. Why are you doing this? Did I do something wrong?" The unread messages quickly reached 51. David had realized that my support had suddenly stopped and he was spiraling. But I didn't touch a single one. The moment I decided never to go back to that house, I stepped out of the loop of their dependence. And yet, there was still a quiet sting in my heart. Had I run away from my family? Or had I simply reclaimed my own life? I told Sarah everything in a phone call, laying bare the doubts that lingered. You know, I'm still caught on something. I can't stop thinking, did Mom, Dad, and David ever really see me as more than someone useful? Jessica, you already know the answer. If they appreciated you, they wouldn't have exploited you. But what if they misunderstood everything I did? What if they still don't get it? Then you show them the facts, the evidence. Show them exactly how much you carried on your own. I nodded silently. Yes, this wasn't about running away anymore. It was time to bring an end to the silence that had ruled my life. I gathered everything. Screenshots of the family chat, bank transfers to David, a full breakdown of the household expenses I'd covered for a year, the rental agreement, the name changes for all utility bills. I compiled them into one folder. Then I attached the organized PDF files in an email and sent them to my relatives and others who had been involved. The subject line read, regarding what I've experienced over the past year. And in the body, I simply wrote, this is a record of the role I've been made to play in our family. I'd appreciate it if you would take the time to read it. The read receipts came almost immediately. But no one replied. Hours later, a message came from my mom. Jessica, what do you think you're doing? How could you send this to everyone? I can't believe you would air family matters in public. Reading that one sentence, I let out a deep breath. As I thought what mattered to her wasn't my sacrifice, but the family's pride. My dad never replied, despite reading the message. Then came one from David. I can't believe you'd go behind our backs and dump everything like this. I didn't think you were that cold. Fine. I won't contact you again? And still, I didn't regret it. I hadn't done it to provoke guilt or earn an apology. I had simply exposed the truth to protect my own dignity. That night, I had another call with Sarah. You did the right thing, Jessica. You drew a clear line. And you never have to go back. Yeah, thanks. By the way, would you be okay if I archived the documents officially as your lawyer? Just in case something comes up later, I want to make sure you're protected. Please do. I don't expect anything to happen, but I'd rather be prepared. After we hung up, I stepped out onto the balcony. No one was asking anything of me. And in that silence, I finally felt free. A few days later, I unexpectedly heard from my aunt, my mom's older sister. She had always looked out for me when I was younger. Jessica, I read your message. Honestly, I was shocked. I had no idea David was leaning on you like that. But I think you did the right thing. She told me she had gently brought it up with my mother. And that my father had gone quiet ever since. The truth is, I think we all kind of sensed it. But we just didn't want to see it. Her words gave me a sliver of comfort. 3 months had passed since I moved into my new home. Work was going well. Leaving that house had allowed me to truly focus on my career. And yet, something inside still felt unfinished. One day, Sarah invited me to lunch. It had been a while. As we sat by the window, eating pasta, she suddenly asked, "So how are David and your parents these days?" I paused, fork in hand, and tilted my head slightly. I don't know. I haven't heard a thing since then. Maybe it's time you considered seeing them again. Why? Not to forgive, to confirm. so that you can move forward confidently, knowing you don't have to return to that dynamic ever again. Sarah always had a way of hitting where it hurt. But her words were never harsh, they were rooted in kindness. That night, I sat with my phone in hand, debating whether to message David. I had so much I wanted to say, but no idea how to say it. And honestly, I wasn't even sure meeting him would mean anything. Then, a notification popped up on my screen. It was from David. It was a short message. It said, "Do you have time to talk? I want to apologize in person." I stared at the message for a few seconds. I still wasn't entirely sure, but my fingers moved on their own. "I'm free next Saturday. Evening should work." After sending it, I felt a subtle flutter in my chest. A little unease, but also a slight sense of release. On the agreed day, I headed to the family diner we used to visit often. I arrived first, and a few minutes later David walked in. He looked thinner, and his expression was softer. "Hey, it's been a while." "Yeah, it has." We sat quietly across from each other, sipping water, exchanging glances, feeling out the silence. Then, after a long pause, David finally spoke. "Actually, I started working recently." I looked up at him, startled. "What?" "Only 3 days a week, at a warehouse just picking and packing stuff. Nothing major. But I've been showing up." I was surprised. It was hard to believe that David had started working on his own. But his face seemed clearer, a bit lighter. For the first time in a long while, he resembled the brother I used to know. And my chest tightened just a little with warmth. That's good. I'm glad. Honestly, back then, I didn't even know what was right anymore. But when you left, Jessica, that's when I realized. I dumped everything on you. He looked me straight in the eye. "I'm really sorry." I exhaled deeply, then gave a small nod. I couldn't draw the line either. I kept thinking I had to help you. Maybe I just wanted to be the kind of person who helped you. I was hiding, using the word depression to excuse everything. Escaping responsibility. I forgot I needed to stand on my own. His eyes shimmered with tears. "Lately, I've been going to therapy with Mom and Dad. At first, they didn't want to go, but after your email, they changed. Mom's cutting back on spending, she sold the car and started working part-time. Dad even gave up his golf club membership. Money's tight, but at least they're finally facing reality." He smiled faintly, sadly. "But Jessica, you leaving, that's what changed everything. If you hadn't walked out, none of us would have changed." In that moment, something inside me loosened. "Thank you." We chatted a little after that about childhood memories. David teaching me math, building our secret base in the backyard. Back then, we were just siblings. Nothing more, nothing less. As we got up to leave, David pulled a $10 bill from his wallet and handed it to me. "For the coffee today. It's not much, but I'll repay everything someday." I took it and laughed. "All right, I'll add it to your debt list." On the way home, I felt the last bit of resentment inside me start to melt. A few weeks later, I met with my parents. I was nervous at first, but the moment we sat down, Mom quietly apologized. "Jessica, I'm so sorry. I finally realized how much we relied on you." Even Dad looked serious, something rare. "We had no idea how blind we were. We've reflected a lot. From now on, we plan to live independently." They both looked thinner, but somehow, that made their words feel more genuine. I paused for a moment and then nodded. "Thank you. I hear you. And I've decided to forgive everything." forgiveness doesn't erase the past. But it is necessary if you want to move forward. Today I'm walking through life as me, not as the responsible little sister, not as a convenient family member. Just me. Maybe someday we'll be able to laugh together as a family again. But if that happens, it won't be built on my sacrifice. It'll be on equal footing with real smiles.